Welcome back. This is the last module for the course, Emergency and Disaster Management. We'll be looking at Module 10, which is the case studies and career building. Now, by way of module objectives, by the end of this module, you'll be able to analyze conflict and environmental case studies to extract lessons learned. You'll be able to identify the critical success factors in disaster management. You'll be able to explore career paths in disaster management, including certifications and professional development. You'll also be able to understand the importance of networking and industry specialization in career growth. Now, by way of introduction, real world cases um, studies provide valuable insight into how disaster management strategies are applied in practice. In this module, we will explore key conflict and environmental case studies, analyze the lessons learned from them, and discuss career pathways in the field of disaster management. This module is designed to prepare learners not only to understand disaster management theory, but also to apply it to real life situations and professional development. By examining these case studies, learners will have or will gain a deep understanding of disaster dynamics and the critical roles that professionals in this field can play in mitigating and managing this event. Now, let's look at some of the conflict case studies. We're looking at the Sudan Civil War, the Ukraine-Russia war, the Gaza war, and all. Now let's look at understanding conflict-driven disasters. Unlike natural disasters, conflicts often last months or years, with severe impact on infrastructure, population, and regional stability. Some of the key characteristics include prolonged duration, displacement of civilians, and rescue scarcity. You also have humanitarian access challenges and psychosocial impact on affected population. Now, like I said, in the case studies, we're looking at the Sudan Civil War, where there were humanitarian crisis, there were displacements, and there were challenges of delivering aid. We'll also be looking at the Ukraine-Russia war. There were large-scale displacements, destruction of infrastructure, and there were coordination of international aid efforts. We'll also be looking at the Gaza war, where there were recurrent conflicts with restricted access to resources and medical care. Now, let's look at some of the humanitarian responses in conflict zones. The key objective of this is life-saving assistance, the food, clean water, medical care, and shelter. Then we have protection of civilians, ensuring safe zones, monitoring human rights, and preventing violence. We also have logistics coordination, managing supply chains in contested or unsafe areas, resource mobilization, securing funds, personnel, and equipment. Now, the challenges involved were navigating um, active zones safely, limited infrastructural and access to affected population. Then we also had political and legal barriers hindering aid delivery. Now let's look at some of the environmental case studies. We are looking at Los Angeles wildfire, the Turkey Syria earthquake, and the Pakistan flooding. Now, the key characteristics of environmental disaster, first off, let's look at the characteristics. There is sudden onset. That means such disasters such as earthquakes, floods, and wildfire occur with little warning. Then there's large scale impact. They affect entire community, regions, or multiple countries. There's also secondary effects like landslide, waterborne disease, and environmental degradation. There's also vulnerability amplification, where there's poor infrastructure and socio-economic inequality um, increase the severity of these disasters. Now, for the case studies, you're looking at Los Angeles wildfire. where California's wildfire recurring impact due to dry conditions, increasing temperatures and climate changes. Now, for the Turkey Syria earthquake, it was a magnitude of 7.8 earthquake that caused significant casualties and infrastructural collapse. Now, for the Pakistan flooding, there was monsoon rain that led to devastating floods, displacing millions and destroying crops. Now, lesson learned from conflict and environmental disasters. Coordination is critical. Effective communication among humanitarian organizations, government, military is essential to reach vulnerable populations safely. Then preparedness and flexibility. Despite response, disaster team must participate. Um, this okay, disaster response teams must anticipate disruptions and adapt quickly to changing circumstances. There should be protection of civilians. Maintaining neutral and impactful humanitarian operations is crucial for safeguarding both aid workers and affected population. Then there should be um, psychological support. Trauma counseling and mental health programs are vital for individuals affected by conflict or disaster. Then there should be sustainable recovery, that is, rebuilding infrastructure and addressing long-term socioeconomic needs are essential for post-disaster stability. Now, what are some of the disaster management strategies? For conflict disaster management, there should be early warning systems and proactive conflict monitoring. There should be establishment of safe zones and shelters for displaced population. Then there should be resource allocation and stockpiling essential supplies. Then there should be mental health interventions for trauma survivors. While for environmental disaster management, there should be early detection and warning systems for flood, wildfires, and earthquakes. For community preparedness, there should be community preparedness through education and resource mobilization in these affected areas. Then infrastructural resilience, including fire breaks, flood defenses, and earthquake resistant buildings. Now, let's look at some of the career paths in disaster management. What are some of the common career paths? There's emergency response coordinator. Their job is to lead disaster response team. They will also have the risk assessment specialist. Their job is to identify hazards, analyzing vulnerability, and create mitigation strategies. That's a risk assessment specialist. They will also have humanitarian aid officer working with NGOs to provide relief to affected population. They will have crisis communication officer. Their job is to manage public information during emergencies. They also have logistics and supply chain manager coordinating delivery of food, water, medical supply during crisis. They will also have the public health and safety officer managing health risk and disease outbreak during disaster. This is the job of a public health and safety officer. Now, what are some of the certifications you need to have um um to be any of this or to function as any of this career path? Now, the first one is the Certified Emergency Manager. This is a globally recognized certification for emergency management professional (CEM). Then you have the FEMA certification in USA. This is training in disaster recovery, planning, and incident command systems. Then you also have international certificates offered by organizations like the International Federation of Red Cross or and Red Crescent Societies (IFRC). They also have specialized credentials, certifications in areas like risk management, crisis communication, disaster logistics, and psychological first aid from any recognized institution or learning platforms in the world. Now let's look at networking and professional development in emergency and disaster management. Then we have industry conferences and workshops. Attend events hosted by organizations like the UN, the FEMA, or local disaster management agencies. They also have professional associations. Join groups such as the International Association of Emergency Managers to network and engage with peers We also have online forums and community where you participate in online discussions and share knowledge with global disaster professionals. We also have mentorship where you seek guidance from experienced practitioners to develop skills and to navigate career progression. Now let's look at industry specialization opportunities. We have risk assessment and hazard mitigation. They specialize in identifying vulnerability and creating preventational strategies. We have crisis communication and public relations. They manage the flow of information during emergencies. That's the job of this department. Then logistics and resource management. They coordinate the movement of supplies and resources during disaster response. Then the health and safety management. They develop strategies for medical emergencies and disease control during disasters. Then community preparedness and education is they are responsible for designing programs to increase public awareness and resilience. These are the example of a specialization in emergency and disaster management. And by way of conclusion, case studies provide valuable lessons on the complexities of disaster management, from responding to conflict-driven crises to managing environmental disaster. This module also highlights the importance of career development and the resources available to those interested in pursuing a career in disaster management. By leveraging the knowledge gained in this module, learners can better understand challenges faced by professionals in the field and take actionable steps to advance their career. By way of assessment, there is an assessment part where you answer 50 multiple choice questions and you do a report to test your knowledge of case studies and career development in disaster management. That's the end of this course, emergency and disaster management. Thank you.